So in this video, we will be continuing on the circulatory system, more about it. So basically, all of the information here is based on osmosis. I just made a reviewer out of it, and I want to discuss it to you. So cardiac output is equal to the amount pumped out. This is from the ventricles, and it's divided by the time. And venous return is the rate at which the veins return blood, and it's divided by the time. I won't say anything more than that, so let's move on. From osmosis, it's said that, what is this? Okay, so the average adult has roughly 5 liters of blood, 10% in this part, 5% in this part. I believe it's inferior part of the heart. This 65% here, 5% there, 15% here. Okay, it's better to watch the actual osmosis video to have a more elaborate explanation on that part. So let's go to systemic arterial blood. So 5% goes to the skin, 25% goes to the skeletal muscles, 25% to the gastrointestinal tract, 25% to the kidneys, 5% to the heart, 15% to the brain. So that's the distribution. And one thing to know regarding the difference between arteries and veins is that for veins, there's a high volume, but there's low pressure. These come together, and there are valves, of course. The valves are intended to prevent the regurgitation or the backflow of blood. For arteries, on the contrary, there's high pressure, and at the same time, there's low volume. Most likely, that's because arteries carry oxygenated blood, so there is a need for high pressure. It's synonymous with the phenomenon of having high pressure and having a low volume. So yeah, kind of makes sense. If it's oxygenated blood, then the blood vessel has to have a really thick layer. If it's deoxygenated, then the layer could be very thin, which describes the physical feature of a vein. So yeah, in an artery, there is no need for valves. It's already narrow enough to prevent the backflow of blood. So yeah, I mentioned something related to this in a previous video on what contributes to. You know what? Let's get back to that part. It's there. So what are the factors that affect the upward movement of H2O? This is in the context of transpiration. So basically, adhesion and cohesion. For adhesion, water adheres to the inner lining of the xylem. Basically, the more narrow a vessel is, then there's a higher chance for it to adhere. Okay, so where are we? So yeah, that's everything you need to know. No valves for arteries. There are valves for veins. Let's go to the 3 layers of the blood vessels, in other words, tunics. Lumen, by the way, is what is responsible for holding blood innermost. Okay, I personally don't understand my own reviewer in this part. So yeah, 3 layers. We have the tunica intima, tunica media, and tunica externa. Okay. So Um, where are we? So largest arteries, in other words, aorta, aortic branches, and pulmonary arteries. Um, Elastic arteries, from the word elastic, they're stretchy. Uh, I haven't known this before, but they absorb pressure. And of course, from the word elastic, they have elastin, like a lot of them. Bulky muscles contracts, uh, vasoconstriction, lumen is smaller. If it relaxes, then the lumen is larger. In other words, vasodilation. And yeah, if this happens, if contraction happens, then the body temperature is raised. But if there is vasodilation or relaxation, body temperature goes down. So capillary, uh, this is the smallest. This is the smallest in comparison to both the veins and arteries. So there is an exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Particularly, this is in the alveoli. We have exchange of glucose, fluid, ions. Again, when humans break down food, that food is turned into, it's basically hydrolyzed, the opposite of uh, dehydration something, dehydration synthesis. Um, yeah, hydrolyzation into macromolecules, particularly carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. But particularly for carbohydrates, which is basically glucose, this is where we find it. So, um, as you can see, the concept of cellular respiration and macromolecules, they're not so far from this lesson. Uh, Glucose exchange, fluid exchange, ion exchange. Some ions require active transport in order to enter or exit through the phospholipid layer. Um, so one cell sick is the tunica intima, sometimes the basement membrane for extra support. Uh, yeah, this is, I won't own this part. It's not what I made the reviewer from. Oh, okay. Cardiovascular system diseases. We have four in this reviewer. So we have hypertension, in other words, high blood pressure. We have atherosclerosis, coronary heart disease, heart attack, and cardiac arrest. Actually, five. But we're trying to see the difference between heart attack and cardiac arrest, since they're most likely confused in terms of their own definitions. So, okay, we did not tackle too much on these diseases. I think that's it. Let me discuss it with what I know. So, hypertension, high blood pressure. Um, this is this is bad in a way that um, if, for instance, you're easily angry, then you have a higher chance of getting hypertension, and it's bad. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. That's all I know for now. Atherosclerosis. This is basically the buildup of plaque uh, in the blood vessels of the body. So this plaque is made out of lipids, basically fats. So if you eat fast food often, there's a high chance to get atherosclerosis, and this can um, prevent or impede blood flow. So we do have valves in the veins, but provided that there is a buildup of plaque, uh, regurgitation or backflow of blood may still be prevented, but there is an impeding or impediment in basically blood flow. So yeah, uh, basically it's dangerous if blood flow is impeded. Coronary heart disease. It's just like atherosclerosis, but the plaque buildup is in the heart itself. So yeah, what reminds me from this disease is a heart attack drill. So yeah, fast food, basically food that has a really high fat content, which makes you consume more fat than what you're supposed to in a single day, um, you have a high chance of getting coronary heart disease, as well as heart attack. They're not so far from each other. Heart attack is basically when the heart, you know what, let's search it. But basically, for cardiac arrest, on the contrary, this is an electrical problem, unlike heart attack. So that's one difference. Heart attack. Okay, so this happens when the flow of blood of the heart is severely reduced or blocked. So yes, buildup of fat, cholesterol, bad cholesterol. Um, yeah, it's somehow related to atherosclerosis. Perhaps because of atherosclerosis, you can build up complications of having a high risk of heart attack. Um, so yeah, that's it. For cardiac arrest, yeah, it's an electrical problem. The heart stops beating suddenly, and the lack of blood flow to the brain and other organs can cause a person to lose consciousness. So yeah, there is a lack of blood flow to the brain, and yeah, if there's not enough blood um, flowing to the brain, there's a good chance that you lose consciousness. The cerebellum needs blood, and yeah, at the same time, the cerebellum is responsible for all motor movement, uh, any motor movement that is voluntary. So yeah, next, open circulatory system. This is the chemical exchange between the circulatory fluid called hemolymph and the body cells. So the contraction of the heart, pure hemolymph, through vessels to sinuses, relaxation of the heart draws the hemolymph back in through the pores. What are the advantages for open circulatory system? I'm not sure why we have this in the first place. Uh, there is a decrease. If there is a decrease in hydrostatic pressure, then this is equivalent to a less cost in energy expenditure. Hydrostatic pressure is used by by some spiders in order to extend their legs. So yeah, this is very important among particular species, organisms in nature. One of them being spiders. Oh yeah, other species that exhibit a kind of open circulatory system are arthropods and mollusks. So yeah, but that's not for humans. I believe this is ours. We have, instead of an open, we have a closed circulatory system. So this is a chemical exchange between blood and intestinal fluid as well as body cells. So one or more hearts, for instance, octopuses, octopi. Basically, they have three hearts. So yeah, technically they classify as having a closed circulatory system. They pump blood into large blood vessels and ultimately to the organs. Um, Blood, or in other words, circulatory fluid. Um, by the way, for open circulatory system, it's called hemolymph. For closed circulatory system, it's called blood. Blood is confined to vessels and it's distinct from intestinal fluid. What are the advantages for having a closed circulatory system? Now it makes sense. These are the advantages for these species to have an open circulatory system, and these are the advantages for having a closed circulatory system, particularly for humans among other animals. High blood pressure is equal to the effective delivery of oxygen and nutrients to the cells of larger animals. So there's just a tendency that the capability of the open circulatory system in catering life support to the organism is that it cannot really work for larger animals. A closed circulatory system is more appropriate for this kind of requirement. So, yeah, it is the best for regulating the distribution of blood to organs. And yeah, what other organisms exhibit this kind of circulatory system? Annelids, basically earthworms, cephalopods, and vertebrates. That includes us. Aves, Pisces, Reptilia, Amphibia, and Mammalia. So, regarding the types of blood vessels, by the way, as stated earlier, um, regarding their specific types, the main definition for this is they basically serve as a medium where blood circulates to and from the heart. Okay. So we have three kinds: arteries, blood from the heart to the body organs. So blood is carried from the heart to the body. This is oxygenated blood. So they branch into arterioles, and arterioles um, into capillaries. So from the previous video, just the one before this one. Uh, so arteries are the biggest. If arteries are the biggest in terms of narrowness, arterioles are more narrow, and the narrowest blood vessels are the capillaries, which brings us to the second type, capillaries, to what it is. So capillary beds infiltrate every tissue. So every tissue of the body, there is a network of capillaries, and this is how food and oxygen are distributed to the human body. Through capillaries, there is an exchange of oxygen, carbon dioxide, whenever we inhale, exhale, exchange of glucose. Glucose is our food. What we get coming from carbohydrates, coming from bread, from fiber, um, that our digestive enzymes are able to digest, such as I'm not sure about this, but I think cellulose isn't one of them. Definitely, I'm not sure, but yeah, there's just one enzyme from the digestive tract of cows that are capable of digesting grass, which we do not have. That's the reason why we don't digest grass. We don't eat grass. So yeah, as well as ions. Uh, okay, back to where we are. Uh, so chemicals, for example, dissolved gases, they're exchanged by diffusion between blood and the intestinal fluid. So yeah, for veins, they're responsible for carrying blood from the body to the heart. So it's like homecoming. And we have venules. They are connected to capillaries and they converge into veins. We'll make a part 3. I'll be back.